There's something for every imagination at your local comic shop. Visit ComicShopLocator.com to find a store near you.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Dan Wickline Show. It is March 15th. March 15th. We're 2 days from St. Patrick's Day, so we can all get our drink on then. But we're going to kind of wing it a bit for this show. Got a few things to talk about. It was an interesting weekend. But we're going to kick it off with the trailer for Miss Marvel dropped this morning, and I will break it down tomorrow. I thought about doing it today, but I want to be able to do a little more research into it. Miss Marvel isn't a character that she debuted around a time when I really wasn't reading Marvel comics at the time. You know, I had kind of stepped away from reading comics. So she's not a character that I'm completely familiar with. I know most of the backstory, but I really want to dig a little deeper into her. So when I talk about the character, I can cover all of it. So we'll talk about Miss Marvel tomorrow, the thing. But there were some interesting things that came out of it. Just want to mention before we move on. One of the things is that they are obviously changing her origin. In the comics, she is an Inhuman, so she's tied into that world. But the whole Happy Stabby Day? Hey, John, welcome. Stabby Day. Is St. Patrick's Day Stabby Day? Okay. So the whole Inhumans world is kind of touchy for the MCU because of the failed TV series. And yes, the day that Julius Caesar sat around going, "Ow, quit it! Ow, quit it! Ow, quit it!" Yeah, Stabby Day, Ides of March. Okay, so because of the failed Inhuman series, it's kind of an area that Marvel doesn't want to mess with right now. It might also be why they're not embracing Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. as they are embracing some of the Netflix shows. So I could see them going, okay, let's stay away from the Inhumans. And Miss Marvel, of course, is an Inhuman. So they're changing it. And it looks like she gets her powers from bracelets, or if they have the same thing. If you remember, the original Captain Marvel had a symbiotic relationship with Rick Jones, and they shared these negabands where if they hit them together, they would transport from the negative zone or whatever it was. It was a really weird setup they had in the 70s. It felt a little bit like they were trying to do a Shazam thing, which is also named Captain Marvel, so it makes sense. But so it could be that she gets her bands and that gives her cosmic abilities similar to Captain Marvel, which makes more sense. Her origin is much more related to Captain Marvel. Her powers also seem, instead of having the ability to grow her body and embiggen, as she uses the term, it looks more like they're taking a page from Green Lantern, that she's able to make energy constructs from the power of whatever bands she ends up with. At least that's what I'm picking up from the trailer. I will, like I said, I'll do a little more digging. We can have a full-on conversation about that tomorrow. Join me here for that. But the second thing of interest is that it looks like we may finally have overlapping series from Disney. are from Disney Plus, because we're going through this dry period right now where, Book of Boba Fett ended, and we're waiting for Moon Knight to start, and we've got like 6 weeks in between. All the shows seem to have these downtimes. Well, Kenobi starts on May 25th, and Miss Marvel starts on June 8th. So unless Kenobi is only a two episode series, they're going to be releasing at the same time. So, yeah, JD makes a good point. It would be pretty hard to introduce mutants and Inhumans at the same time. True, I could see that. But we just introduced Eternals, so there'll be mutants and Eternals, and maybe Marvel needs to back off a little. Maybe just relax a little bit, Take some time. Oh, wait, they did take all of 2020. We didn't have a new Marvel movie from the end of Spider-Man Far From Home to the beginning to Black Widow. So it was a chunk of time. But we did get some TV shows, so that was pretty cool. So, yeah, it looks like we're actually going to have some overlap. So maybe we're going to get to a point where they're consistently putting out series. We have Kenobi, and then we have that Miss Marvel, and then we have Andor and She-Hulk, and where it's not giving us these big patches, which I don't think is a good idea for Disney Plus anyway, to have these big, month and a half patches, because people might cancel their subscriptions for a month and a half. Why pay for the month of March if you can wait in April 1st, fire it back up again, shut it off the end of February, fire it back up again in April, save yourself the $10 or whatever it is for Disney Plus. Yeah, see, I don't think they want that. So they need to get it where they either have a Star Wars series or a Marvel series going at all times. I don't think reboots of Turner and Hooch are going to be enough to carry the streaming service. Just saying. All right, so putting that aside, again, we'll dive deep into the Miss Marvel lore tomorrow. Over the weekend, we lost an incredible actor, William Hurt, who, of course, is connected to the Marvel Universe. He was in The Incredible Hulk as General Thaddeus Thunderbolt Ross, opposite of Ed Norton and Liv Tyler. And while very little of that movie has been carried over, the movie still exists in the MCU, but Liv Tyler's never been back. Ed Norton was replaced by Mark Ruffalo. And it wasn't network he was in, it was broadcast news. Network was very different. Network's an amazing movie too, Patty Chayefsky, but broadcast news, yeah. But he came back. It's that Thunderbolt Ross, just like we had. The only two people who have come back from the Hulk movie into the MCU proper are Thaddeus Ross and Emil Blonsky, and we're going to get more of him in She-Hulk. We just had him in, The Abomination in Shang-Chi. So you can see that the movie does exist, and Ross came back in Endgame, Civil War with the Sokovia Accords. He popped up in Black Widow, was most recent. But again, and as JD points out, William Hurt had just an amazing career. He's been around in the industry since. He made his debut as in a 2-part Kojak show episode called Kojak Days. So it shows you how long ago it was, back in 1977. So he did a lot of TV shows in 77 and 78. And then he got his first real movie role was in Altered States. So basically he had like 3 TV shows, and then he ended up in another Patty Chayefsky. You talked about Network. This is the Patty Chayefsky film that he did, directed by Ken Russell, Altered States, which really kind of launched him. And from there, he went on. He did Body Heat, like the next year, along with Eyewitness. Then he was in The Big Chill, Gorky Park, Kiss of the Spider Woman, Children of the Lesser God, Broadcast News. Those are all in a row, by the way. So The Big Chill, Gorky Park, Kiss of the Spider Woman, Children of the Lesser God, Broadcast News. Those 5 movies came out in a row, and it just I think he was nominated for an Oscar in a big chunk of those. He went on to do The Accidental Tourist, I Love You to Death, Until the End of the World, Mr. Wonderful, Trial by Jury, and just kind of kept going and going, doing these movies. Michael, Dark City, remember the Dark City movie with Russell Sewell and Kiefer Sutherland and Jennifer Connelly. It was kind of The Matrix before The Matrix. It was an Alex Proyas directed and written movie, screenplay by David Goyer. And it just, from there, he went on. He was in Lost in Space. He was in Dune, the TV series Dune, Valerian War, The Forgotten Hero. He was in AI. It just goes on and on and on. The guy was a phenomenal actor. He was in A History of Violence with, which was based on a graphic novel, of course, but with Viggo Mortensen and Mario Bello and Ed Harris. That was, John Wagner's and Vince Locke's graphic novel, directed by David Cronenberg. The guy is phenomenal. Like I said, The Good Shepherd, The Yellow Handkerchief. Then he did The Incredible Hulk. He was actually in a movie called Endgame, ironically enough, but he was in Robin Hood. Beowulf, Infinity War, Endgame. He was in the TV series Goliath, and then Black Widow was one of the last things he was in. There was a series he was in right now called Pantheon, where so that was currently filming. So I don't know how they're going to handle that. The King's Daughter, which came out recently, which I believe was the Pierce Brosnan movie. Yeah. So the guy was, like I said, just a phenomenal actor. Did so many good things. Yeah, Dark City was an incredibly underrated movie. I like Dark City so much more than The Matrix. It's like, want to watch Matrix? No, I'd rather watch Dark City. Dark City was a phenomenal movie. So William Hurt's passing. Now, is that going to affect the MCU? And I hate to bring that up, but I know that's a question people have, because as much as, well, he's just Thunderbolt Ross, it's not that big a deal. But there's been a lot of speculation that we were going to get a Thunderbolt series. And, of course, Thunderbolt Ross is that. I don't think that's going to change Marvel's plans that much, because there's a lot of things they could do. If they did plan on doing a Thunderbolt series and they planned on having his character become Red Hulk, then they could just switch it around a bit. They could bring back the actor that played, was it Talbot? I think it's Talbot. That's the yeah. Who played Talbot? I want to say it was Josh something. Where is it? Tim Blake Nelson. Oh yeah, they need to bring back Tim Blake Nelson as Samuel Stearns. But okay, you know what? I was wrong. I'm confusing the two Hulk movies. Talbot was in the Eric Bana one, so we never got a Glenn Talbot in the MCU yet. So they could absolutely introduce Talbot as kind of somebody who studied under Ross and is kind of naming the team Thunderbolts after Ross, and he could become the Red Hulk. There's a lot of other ways they could get around it. And So I don't think his passing will affect the MCU because, like I said, if they had planned to use him, they can find a ways around it. And that's the thing, whether it's Miss Marvel changing her origin from an Inhuman to a cosmic being, or Thunderbolt Ross not being Red Hulk, the MCU is not Marvel Comics. The Marvel Comics universe is the Marvel Comics universe. The MCU is a variation on it. It doesn't have to be exactly the same. Just like, in the Marvel Comics universe, Iron Man never married Pepper Potts. They were never together. She ended up with Happy Hogan. But in the MCU, we're fine that Tony Stark and Gwyneth Paltrow hooked up, or that Pepper Potts hooked up. That makes perfect sense. And that, Happy Hogan ended up dating Aunt May. We're good with that. We've accepted that. And as soon as you realize that they're different entities, and it doesn't make it bad because the the Marvel Comics still exist. That version still exists. This is just a different version. This is something, I always go back to this. When I was very early in the comic industry, I went to a convention in Los Angeles. Todd McFarlane was there. This was around the time that the Spawn movie was about to come out. And they had the animated series on HBO, and they had the comics. And somebody asked Todd if he was upset at the changes that were made for the television series. And Todd said, no, why would I be? The comics are my version of the character of Spawn. It's my creation, and it's my version of it. The animated TV series is someone else's take on my creation, and the movie is someone else's take on that. Why would you want them to be the exact same? You've already got the comics, you've got that story. Get and watch something different. Let them do their story. And I've always taken that to heart. And as long as you keep the essence of the characters, then you don't have to be a slave to what came in the comics or what came in the graphic novel. You can make changes. And I think that's something that Kevin Feige is very good at, because the Cosmic Cube, which they renamed the Tesseract, in comics is not an Infinity Stone. It's completely separate. But after doing the Captain America movie, he saw an opportunity to make it one of the Infinity Stones. Did they know the Ether was going to be one? Well, probably. Once he saw the script, he went, oh, hey, we can make that work. We can make this work. He starts putting it together. So I think in a lot of ways, you can't get hung up on what they did in the comics because it's not the comics. Now, JD says, I'm just worried that Disney took Miss Marvel from Feige and said, oh, hey, this is a teen show. We know this genre. We'll take care of this. And it might end up a Marvel Witches of Waverly Place. I don't see it. Kevin Feige, now there are reports that Kevin Feige is not as hands-on as he was. But it's not because Disney is forcing him to do stuff. It's that there's so much going on, he can't be in every meeting. And the meetings he's not getting to, you still have Victoria Alonso in those meetings. You still have all the other people, Louis D'Esposito. So, no, I don't think Disney learned with Pixar. When you buy the company, you let Pixar be Pixar. And I think they learned with Star Wars that too much meddling can cause problems. So I don't see them doing that with Miss Marvel. Do I think that they've done a certain tone and stuff? Yeah, but it doesn't strike me as that different than the first Spider-Man movie, Spider-Man No Way or Homecoming. It's had kind of that feeling to it too. Is it a little more, drawing on the screen type thing? But I think that fits that character. So I don't think Disney is the reason it is that way. I think this is Kevin Feige doing this type of show that he wants to do. And that's the other thing, is that Feige is really good at changing things up. You know, Miss Marvel should be its own show. It have its own genre, its own style. It should not be, Moon Knight and Miss Marvel should not be the same show. It shouldn't, the thing with the Netflix series, in a lot of ways, that's what made them work, is that Daredevil was its type of show. Jessica Jones was its type of show. And they did feel like they were connected, but there was a certain thing, like, the creators and stuff of Luke Cage that worked on Luke Cage, you felt them in the show. And I think that's the key. So that, I think, is fine here, but I don't think it's going to turn out that everything that it feels like it totally doesn't fit in the MCU. It just feels like it's going to be its own thing in the MCU, which is the same thing with the comics. They change those up too. The Miss Marvel comic is different than the Daredevil comic. So it makes a lot of sense. So, all right. You know what? I'm done talking about William Hurt. Again, sadly, he passes at age 71. There hasn't been an official cause of death listed, but it's due to natural causes. He died at home surrounded by his family. So, rest in peace, Mr. Hurt. It was a pleasure seeing your career. Let's go ahead and take an early pause. We're going to take a break now. That way we can spend the rest of the show talking about Pennyworth. So we'll be right back in just a minute.
Imagine being at a convention and going to an interview panel that's just for you. No bustling crowds, no hours-long lines, just you, the moderator, and your favorite comic book creators. Well, this is pretty much that. Miss Jen sits down every week with 2 comic book creators for a live stream interview about their latest work, and you can ask them whatever you want. It's Talking Shop, Mondays at 5 Eastern on The Experience, Comic Culture and Sales.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Dan Wickline Show. We are going to be talking about Pennyworth. Now, I've been doing a breakdown of the series. We got a 3rd season coming soon. Not sure when. He had cancer. Okay. John is referring to William Hurt. There wasn't any reports yesterday of it, but it says that he had cancer. So, and I kind of get it, because when I watched Black Widow, he looked kind of ill, and they kind of talked about it in the saying he had some heart problems. The character, then they've written that into the character, that he had heart issues. They talked about it in Civil War, when he talked about golfing and stuff like that, and they also mentioned it in the Black Widow movie, and maybe they were addressing the fact that William Hurt was looking ill. They were setting that up, maybe. So, yeah. Again, condolences to William Hurt's family. Incredible actor. So, all right, we are talking about Pennyworth. In the last 2 weeks, I've talked about the first season, broken down by halves. Today, we're going to talk about the first half of season 2. Season 3 is in the works. Now, this show is just crazy. It really is. If you haven't been tuned in for the other two things, it's this weird hybrid show in a way. It's created by Danny Cannon and Bruno Heller. Bruno Heller and Danny Cannon created Gotham. Bruno Heller was also the driving force behind the TV series The Mentalist, I believe. So he's got a pretty good pedigree, and they decided to do a prequel series for Gotham based on Alfred Pennyworth. So where you think, okay, that means this character is like a young Sean Pertwee who played Alfred in the Gotham series. But he's not. So even though it's supposed to be a Gotham prequel, it's not. It's like an Elseworld. The best way to describe it is you have to put aside what you know about Batman and Batman's universe and think of it like an Elseworld, because it has Thomas Wayne, it has Martha, who becomes Martha Wayne, Martha Kane. It has, of course, Alfred Pennyworth, and it has, turns out, Lucius Fox, who we just meet in season 2. But it also has the Queen of England, Aleister Crowley, and just a lot of interesting characters. But season 1 and season 2 have a very tonal difference. Season 1 was basically Alfred's an ex-SAS soldier, decided to start his own security firm, and in a time where England is beset with civil unrest between two factions on the extremes. You have the Raven Society, or the Raven Union, they changed their name at one point, and the No Name League. The No Name League is your far left liberal side. Your Raven Society is the far right militaristic, almost Nazi side. That's run by Lord Harwood, and the No Name League is run by a gentleman whose name I can't remember, but that's the setup. And Thomas Wayne is working for an American agency. By the way, let's put the spoiler banner up, JD. Just throwing that out there, going to throw JD off, but we need to run the spoilers because there's going to be spoilers. All right, so if you haven't finished season 1, I'm going to spoil some stuff for you. And I know John was saying that he's going to, he's just getting into Pennyworth. So, John, you might want to tap out here and catch this later on. So, again, season 1 is this fight between the two for power, and poor Alfred is getting caught in the middle. Thomas Wayne works for the CIA. Martha Kane works for the No Name League, and Thomas is kind of associated with the No Name League and trying to get Alfred to be an operative. Alfred, so there's a lot going on. There's a gangster that he gets involved with named John Ripper, who is also affiliated with the No Name League. Lord Harwood, played by is it Jason Fleming? He does such a great job, and is just absolutely crazy in that. Yeah, Jason Fleming plays James Harwood, and he is this kind of he's the symbol of the right, and he gets arrested in the first episode and is tortured by the left to the point where he loses his nose, which doesn't make a lot of sense. He spends the rest of the series with this metal nose replacement, which again makes him almost a Bond villain. It doesn't feel like it's, I mean, they didn't need to do it. It doesn't add to the story. It just makes him very kind of strange. And he's kind of mentally screwed up because of the torture, yet he's running this society. So season 1 is just kind of crazy. And we learn a lot about Alfred and his situation, his love life, the woman he tries to marry, and it just goes all haywire. Well, by the end of the season, the Raven Society had taken over London, and Alfred and his mates had to rescue the Queen, who is very appreciative of the rescue to the point where she shags Alfred. Yep, I did say that. Alfred nails the Queen. And then she gets kind of attached to him, and he has to dodge her phone calls. Anyway, so but the end of it has Alfred rescuing the Queen from a bomb, and you don't know where the season's going to end, right? It's like, okay, the Raven Society, it looks like they've been defeated. Well, when season 2 picks up, it's completely changed. We're a year later, and London is at war with itself. The Raven Society, turns out, by blowing up the dinner party that the Queen was at, that had most of the government, it was enough for Lord Harwood to get out of jail and start up his thing. And they've taken over most of England, but they haven't taken over some of the big cities like Manchester or London itself. And now London is the home of the English League. It's now no longer the No Name League. It's the English League. And the Raven Society is now the Raven Union. And it's now we're in the middle of this weird war. And Alfred went from working as a bouncer at a club and doing his security stuff to now owning a club and doing side jobs to make some money because he wants to move out of England and get over to America. And it's this very different story. Like I said, we've jumped a year and everything has changed. So instead of it being this kind of weird 1960s London that has this almost Avengers, Steed & Peel Avengers, not Captain America, Iron Man, Avengers style feel to it that has like secret agencies or spy agencies and stuff going on, and Alfred kind of in the middle, to this wartime London where everything is happening, and it's just really strange because, like I said, it almost has like this survivor thing going on, or these people trying to have a normal life, but they're in the middle of the war and they're the resistance, and it's obvious that the oppressors are coming, and it kind of parallels what's going on, to get political for a second, what's going on over in Ukraine right now with them trying to hold Kiev, and Russia on the outskirts and bombing, but not actually getting into the city. And that's kind of how London is. So the people are still trying to have a normal life, but they know this force is coming in. So it's a very much like Ukraine right now. And Alfred is kind of like, Bogart's character from Casablanca. He's got his bar. He does little side jobs. He's not really part of the resistance. He's only out for himself. He'll take jobs and then he'll double cross just to make more money. And we get a couple new characters introduced. His first job he gets in season 2 is to kidnap a scientist working for the Raven Society named Salt. He's played by Edward Hogg, and this guy is creepy and just... He reminds me a little bit of, and I cannot think of the actor's name, but he's done a lot of Star Trek, but he's done a lot of like H.P. Lovecraft movies like Reanimator. Jeffrey Combs. He reminds me a bit of Jeffrey Combs. He's got that look to him, the feel to him. And the whole thing is he's creating this bomb that has the ability, it's a chemical weapon that will basically kill everybody in London without doing any damage to the structure. And that's the big thing they want, is they want to take London, but if they're seen destroying London, then they'll look like oppressors. They won't look like victors. So that's why the Ravens Union is holding off. Well, now, through the first 5 episodes, they're trying to build this weapon, and that's the buildup in number 5. So you've got that character. Also brought in is James Purefoy. I can never get his name right. James Purefoy plays Captain Gulliver Troy, who is Alfred's old commanding officer, and he's running his own unit that do side jobs and stuff, but he also does some robbery and whatnot, and he's kind of making his money. And Alfred kind of hooks up with them. So you've got that thing going on. But Alfred's got his relationship he's doing, but through the whole thing, he just wants to get out of London. Now, there was something I was going to before, and I lost track. I was talking about how this is supposed to be a prequel series for Gotham, but it's not. And the reason it's not is that when they cast the character, or when they were casting Alfred, they weren't thinking of Sean Pertwee. And it's pretty obvious when you watch the show that they weren't thinking of Sean Pertwee, because the gentleman they have, Jack Bannon, playing Alfred, is nothing like Sean Pertwee. But what inspired them was actually a speech from The Dark Knight, where Michael Caine's version of Alfred talks about the guy who is just setting fires and just wants to watch the world burn, and how Alfred talks about how he was part of the SAS. Now, up until then, it's been a little bit in the comics, but most of the time, Alfred is like an ex-medic. He's not really a soldier or a special forces. And this was the first time he really got that special forces feel in live action. I believe that Jeff Johns made him a special forces guy in the Earth 1 series with Gary Frank. But in the live action, this was the first time. So they took that as their inspiration. And then when they went out and got Jack Bannon, he's a young Michael Caine. You listen to him, you watch him, and he's Michael Caine. But it's almost like they took a couple Michael Caine movies and merged them together to make Alfred. He's a bit Alfred Pennyworth from the Christopher Nolan series. He's a bit Michael Caine's character of Carter from Get Carter, with the revenge and the way he handles himself. And he's a bit Alfie, which was the Michael Caine's big breakout movie, where he's this womanizer and stuff like that. And Alfred in this is kind of a womanizer. He goes through a lot of different women. He shags the queen. He's got this one girl he hooks up with. There's this bar maid that he hooks up with and is with for a while. Yeah. Yeah, Alfred the ladies guy. And they even call him Alfie, which is ironic, being that that was the film that Michael Caine really kind of made his name in. So when you watch the show, you really feel like you're watching Michael Caine as a young Alfred Pennyworth, and it's awesome. So that's what I meant to talk about earlier before I got into it. JD reminds me, please, while you guys are here, can you hit the like or thumbs up button, whatever it is on, if you're on Facebook or if you're on YouTube. And if you're on YouTube, could you subscribe? We're trying to build up the subscribers on the site. If we get to a certain point, it opens up a lot more tools for us to be able to produce better stuff, better shows, better communication with you guys. So if you could subscribe, it'd be greatly appreciated. Tell your friends about it. Trying to get the numbers up on the damn Wickline show and everything else on the site. So it would be appreciated. Thank you. All right. So season 2, we've got this weird chemical bomb being built. We're introduced to Gulliver Troy, his old captain. And Alfred is trying to get out of London. That's his big thing. His mom doesn't want to go. She doesn't want to leave America or leave for America. And part of it is because I think she resents Alfred, which is a weird thing to say about somebody's mother. But the first season ends with Alfred realizing that the Raven Society had a backup plan. Once they lost, the old guard was to do this bombing that was already set up. And the problem is the hinge pin to making this happen is the butler that worked for a certain member of parliament, this certain lord, where the queen would be celebrating the victory over the Raven Society. And that butler is Alfred's father. And when Alfred figured it out, he raced there to try to save the queen and to stop his dad. And in doing so, he ended up having to shoot and kill his father. And as much as he was trying to do the right thing, his mother doesn't necessarily see it that way. She didn't necessarily agree with everything that her husband was getting into, the far right-wing politics, stuff like that. But she loved her husband. And now she sees her son as the person that killed her husband. So, plus, if the Ravens come in and take over London, she's the wife of who they consider a hero, having done the bombing. So she would not be in any problem have that happen. So she has no interest in going to London or going to America. He's still trying to make her go, but it kind of all snowballs for him. So a lot of weird stuff happens in the first season. He gets involved with this really weird criminal who's also a mortician, mobster mortician. He gets, there's this crazy girl who kidnapped his girlfriend and tried to, and she's psycho. And a lot of those characters carry over into season 2. But they have very little to do with Alfred at that point. Their stories are still going. There's still things happening, and we're still following them, but they have very little to do with Alfred. And it's kind of interesting because in season 1, Alfred was the hinge pin. Everything revolved around Alfred. And now in season 2, it's more about everybody surviving this change of status. And Alfred has become more of another player. He doesn't feel like he's so much the star of the show anymore because he's not interacting with everybody. Bette, the name of the girl that, he had all those issues with in the first season, is got a new girlfriend, is running around London, killing people, and hooking back up with her sister, and all that makes sense if you've seen season 1, but has had zero contact in the first 5 episodes with Alfred. It's all her own thing. Thomas and Martha have their thing going on now, and that involves Aleister Crowley and the current prime minister, who's an archduke, or an archbishop, and all of that going on. And other than running into him once or twice, that has nothing to do with Alfred. All the stuff with Lord Harwood and building the Thunderstrike bomb and all that stuff, nothing to do with Alfred. Alfred's story right now is him trying to get the money to get out of town, having his money stolen, and then trying to get the money back, and what he has to do to get the money to get out of London, and losing the connection to his mother. All of that is its own little thing. Nothing to do with the rest of it. So that's the weird change that's going on in the series, is that where season 1 really felt like it was an Alfred Pennyworth story, season 2 feels more like, kind of like how Gotham. Gotham originally was supposed to be this crime procedural that followed Jim Gordon as he takes on the corruption of Gotham PD. By season 2, they realized if they were going to stay on the air, they needed to open all the floodgates and go full crazy. So we were following the Oswald Cobblepot and Edward Nygma and all of these other storylines, and Lucius Fox and stuff like that. So it just kind of went crazy from there. Well, that's what they're doing here too. So where all of season 1 is an Alfred Pennyworth thing, season 2 is much more wide open. We will spend an episode where maybe Alfred gets 15% or 25% of the episode, and we spend a big chunk with the Raven Society, and we spend a big Union, and we spend a big chunk with the English League and what Martha and Thomas are doing, and just kind of all over the place. Where in the first season, I'd say 70-75% of an episode was Alfred. So it really is a huge change that these other characters have really come up and are taking that much screen time. I don't know if it's an improvement. Jack Bannon is so good as Alfred, and you really enjoy watching him on screen, that having less of him isn't necessarily an improvement. And I'm not saying the show is bad, but I think they could turn the Alfred back up, since the show is called Pennyworth, So I'd like to see that, but I'm kind of curious where this season's going. And they just introduced their version of Lucius Fox, who, of course, if you're familiar with Batman, you know that he's kind of the tech guy that has helped Batman over the years and stuff. So, it's interesting to see him being brought in, just like they did. They brought in him in Gotham. And again, the fact that this is supposed to be a Gotham prequel series, Lucius Fox in Gotham was kind of a contemporary of, he wasn't that much older than Bruce. I mean, he was older than Bruce, but he wasn't quite as old as Alfred. He was kind of in between. And here, he's probably the same age as Alfred. So he's much, he'd be much older in the series. He's played by Simon Menionda, and we haven't seen much of him. He just pops up in the 4th episode. I don't think we even see him, or if we do, it's just for a few minutes in the 5th episode. And we haven't spent much time with him because he's infiltrated the Raven Society. He's the one getting information about this bomb. But again, that's another interesting character they've brought in. Someone else they brought in, if you're a fan of Arrow, and liked the actress that they had playing the Huntress early on, Jessica DeGao. She plays Captain Troy's wife, Melanie Troy, and she's probably got more to do here than she had in Arrow. So they've brought in a few new characters, and they've kept most of the other characters. Patricia Wayne, which is a creation of the series, Thomas's sister, does show back up. But again, she's a minor recurring character. She's not always in the show. But it is interesting to see her come back. And it's very interesting how they change things up, but it's still, I don't know where they're going. Again, I'm curious. I haven't watched the last 5 episodes of the season. And I know that season 3 is going to change again. Because from what I understand, if you haven't seen this show because you didn't know it existed, it debuted on Epix, which is a channel that not a lot of people have. But with the announcement of the 3rd season, they announced this back during the DC Fandom event in October. They announced that a 3rd season was coming and that the show was moving over from Epix to HBO Max. So that's why I'm covering it now, because it's popped up on HBO Max. That means more people can see it. So if you're a fan of the Peacemaker series, that means you've watched Peacemaker on HBO Max, you can watch this. And both the first 2 seasons are already up. You can binge them if you want. I'm not sure when season 3 is due out. That's a good question, though. Let me see if it's listed at all. Let's see, season 3. I'm not seeing a date. Let's see, Pennyworth. Season 3 premiered. Release date. Yeah, there's no announced date yet. So, but the first one was released in December of 2020. The second one was April of 2021. So it wasn't that far apart. Oh, no, excuse me. December of 2020 was the release of season 2, with it ending in April. So we should be getting around to season 3 soon. But I also know that there's going to be another time jump. There's going to be a 5-year time jump. So it looks like whatever happens this season, it's all going to change again, which is fascinating to me, because this season 2, is so different from season 1. Season 1, again, was an Alfred Pennyworth story where he got involved with these 2 societies. There was some political intrigue. There was some criminal intrigue, stuff like that. He was, kind of a bruiser, but a good guy, kind of a little James Bond, a little Get Carter. Season 2 is much more Rick's cafe from Casablanca, and a lot more political intrigue and war. So I'm not even sure what season 3 is going to be. I mean, it could just go completely crazy. But again, it's a fun crazy. I need to stress that. This show is a lot of fun. Jack Bannon is an amazing Alfred. He is so enjoyable on screen. Thomas Wayne is played by... Let me pull that up real quick. I'm usually better with names, but Ben Aldridge plays Thomas Wayne. Emma Pates plays Martha Kane. They're both fantastic. Paloma Faith plays Bet Sykes, this completely crazy homicidal killer who is just looking for love. She's wonderful. Jason Fleming as Lord Harwood, somewhere between Office Rocker and Hitler. Yet there's still this side of him that you almost feel for. I mean, it's a really well played just all the way around. Even the Queen, you feel for the Queen because she's obviously got a thing for Alfred, and now he's kind of ghosting her. But yeah, all the characters are great, and there's stakes to the show too. So occasionally they kill somebody, so it's not like everybody's safe, whatever. But so far, season 2 has been really good, but very different. So I look forward to seeing the last 5 episodes of season 2. We'll talk about them next week and wrap up season 2 and then try to figure out what season 3 is going to be. But so I'm having a lot of fun talking about the show. I'm having fun watching the show. If you haven't watched it yet, give it a shot. It is something unique, and we're still in that dead zone between Peacemaker and Book of Boba Fett and upcoming Moon Knight. So we've got this open space. Give Pennyworth a shot. I recommend it. All right, guys, that is going to wrap it up. Tomorrow we will do a deep dive into the Miss Marvel trailer and talk about that. Coming up next, it is Tuesday, so Black Comic Universe will be popping up. Then Minute to Skim It with Miss Jen and Bean. And then I will be back tonight to talk about the latest books in stores this week. Kyle is off tonight. He is, I believe he's off doing professional wrestling or something or other. But he will be back next week. So I will be talking comics with Jay Burns tonight. So we'll be covering the latest books. My apologies. I believe Bean has left Space Cadets. So it's Miss Jen will be doing Minute to Skim It. Then that, and I think that'll wrap up the evening. So come back tonight. We're going to be talking about Shadow Man and Angel and Assassin's Creed, Nyx, and a bunch of other really great books. So tune in. I'll be back at 5 o'clock Pacific, 8 o'clock Eastern for that. Stick around, though, for Black Comic Universe starting now.